TCHC public board meeting to order. I'd like to say good afternoon. My name is Adele Emery and I'm the chair of Toronto Community Housing Corporation Board of Directors. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting, which is taking place here in Committee Room 1 of City Hall and virtually on WebEx. And we are also live streaming on YouTube. I would like to begin today's meeting with an acknowledgement that the land we are all on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We also acknowledge all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. We pay tribute to all those ancestors of African origin and descent. I would like to start today's meeting by welcoming Sean Baird to his first TCHC public board meeting. Sean has joined TCHC as our new president and CEO on April the 2nd, and so that's 3 weeks he's in the job, and he is already deeply engaged in the work of the corporation, certainly bringing his passion and experience to bear on the critically important work that takes place here at TCHC. Sean, I want to say again that the board is very pleased that you have assumed the role of CEO. You have our full support, and we have full confidence in your ability to have a positive impact on the work that's done at TCHC. Certainly the search committee was deeply impressed by your passion and social service delivery and your long record of service to the public. We look forward to working with you to continue driving the transformation of our service delivery for many years to come, and to prepare the City of Toronto work on the expansion of affordable housing in Toronto. It's critical, and we're glad you're here as we're embarking on that initiative. So I will ask Sean if you would like to say any words.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. I've been introduced at a few different activities so far, but very much appreciate it. Thank you so much to the tenants, to the staff, and to the board members for welcoming me in my first few weeks here. As I've said to folks already, I've already been out to visit 8 of our communities across Toronto, and I intend to continue doing that, meeting with tenants, meeting with staff, understanding the ongoing challenges that we face, as well as celebrating the successes that we have in delivering the service we do. My message to staff has been clear. There's never been a more important time to be involved in housing than right now, and recognizing the important role that community housing plays in addressing the housing crisis in our city is critical. So thrilled to be here and very excited to be part of Toronto Community Housing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Sean. And again, welcome to your first of many, many board meetings. So next, I would like to highlight for the board TCHC United Way Committee's work. They've been certainly working very hard in the last several months, fundraising through staff events and employee outreach for the United Way. Back in 2022, TCHC set a new company record by raising over $90,000. For 2023, the team set an ambitious target of beating that record for a second year in a row. Doing this would obviously require yeoman's effort by everyone at TCHC. And now that the calculation has been completed, I'm very proud to say that TCHC, again, has beat their 2022 record by a significant margin. So last month, TCHC United Way volunteers came together for a celebration of the 2023 campaign, where they learned that they had raised over $138,000 for United Way. I have to say I was honored to attend the event, and had the opportunity to present the Spirit Award to 14 staff members on that day. And these staff members were nominated by the ELT for their commitment and their enthusiasm to the United Way campaign. And so I, again, congratulate those staff members who won the award. I would also like to thank, it's a heartfelt thank you to Danielle Duty. She organized an amazing event, and it was a lot of fun, and it was a great way for TCHC to celebrate a very successful campaign and all the work that had gone into it. This is an incredible achievement, and it perfectly illustrates the community spirit and passion that the TCHC staff and the campaign cabinet have. And I would like to thank all the volunteers and appreciate your care and determination to make this successful campaign possible. There are a few people who are in the campaign cabinet, and I would like to offer a very special thank you to them. Anita Sangsit, Anitha Valentine, Barbara Schulman, Kaylee Wilson, Chloe Dorazio, Danielle Duty, Dara Meager, Holly Bennett, Louisa Andrews, Maureen Hussein, Michelle Brown, and Sharon Smith. And on behalf of the board, we really appreciate all the effort that you put into this, and we congratulate you on the success. And we certainly look forward to what you'll do next year. So thank you very much. I would also like to offer a thank you to my vice chair and the chair of the GCHRC committee, Joe Cressy. He was not able to attend today, but he is under the weather. But Joe has accepted a position that was announced earlier today as Chief of Staff at Waterfront Toronto. And because of that, he has to resign his position at TCHC to avoid any conflict of interest. So, excuse me, I just wanted to offer my personal thanks to Joe. He has been my vice chair and a huge support to me and an important sounding board. Joe makes me laugh, and I have to say that that's really important to me, and I greatly appreciated that. He has certainly made an important contribution to TCHC. He was here with the initial stages of the city's 65,000 new homes initiative, and participated with me and staff at several meetings with the city, and was instrumental in just getting that launched. He also was very active in the search committee to hire Sean, and I really appreciated his input into that process as well. So he is certainly in his, he joined June, but he has certainly made a mark on the board, and I would like to thank Joe for his strong commitment and passion to TCHC. And I certainly would like to pass on my congratulations on his new appointment, and I know that the board would like to wish him well as he takes on this new role, and I hope that he'll be able to keep in touch. I would have asked him to say a few words, but anyway, that didn't work out. I would also like to thank Kaylee. Kaylee Wilson this is her last board meeting for a while, as she takes her maternity leave. And now she's going to be the mother of two, which does make a difference. It's not just double the work. So I just want to wish Kaylee all the best with a very easy delivery. And I hope, is it a big brother? Sister? Two girls, okay. So I'm from a family of two girls. That doesn't work out always, but anyway, good luck with that. But I hope it goes very smoothly as you welcome your new daughter. So thank you very much, and we hope you'll be back. Thank you. Thank you. So with that, I will move on to the agenda, and I will ask if there are any additions or deletions to today's public agenda of the board. Okay. Hearing none, I will ask if there are any conflicts of interest as it relates to the items on the agenda. Okay, hearing none, I will say that item 7C is a presentation from KPMG, so that item will be pulled, but I would ask if there are any other items that board members would like to pull. John?
I'll hold 9A, the Commissioner of Housing Equities Report.
9A, perfect. Any other ones? John? No, just that one? Nick?
7F, please.
7F, yep.
Yeah, and then 9, B and C.
9, B, and C.
Thank you.
Okay, and the only one I would like to pull is 7D. Are there any other items to be pulled for further discussion? Okay, doesn't look like anyone online has their hand up. So we will move to the first item, which is, motion to approve the agenda, other than the items that I've mentioned. Nick, sorry, John, seconder, all in favor? Sorry, thanks, Kaylee. So we will move to item 7C, and I'm going to turn this over to our CFO, Lily, and KPMG.
Thank you, Chair Marie. So the 2023 year-end audit, it's a clean audit without any audit management points raised. It's without any control deficiency or fraud risk as well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our KPMG lead partner and also his team, Kevin Travers, to give us highlights of the audit findings report. Over to you, Kevin.
Thank you very much, Lily. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Travers. I'm the lead audit partner from KPMG on the TCHC audit. I'm joined today by Rebecca Nunu. She is the audit manager. We're going to speak very, very briefly to our audit findings with respect to the completion of the audit of TCHC's financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2023. We do have a package that is included, but we'll speak to just very much the highlights of the document rather than doing a page by page. So I'll start off by saying that the work from our standpoint is complete. We are in a position to issue our signed, unqualified audit opinion for the financial statements. The only thing that is outstanding at this point in time is understanding that the financial statements have been approved by the board. Once the board has approved the financial statements, we will receive from management their signed representation letter, and then in turn we will issue our unqualified opinion, as I noted earlier. With respect to the current period audit, as Lily had mentioned, there are no significant control deficiencies noted as a result of performing the audit itself, and had we encountered any, we would have included those within our report. The significant item with respect to the current year audit was the adoption of a new accounting standard. There was a new accounting standard that was required to be adopted by all public sector entities in the current period relating to asset retirement obligations. This requires all organizations following this particular accounting framework to recognize a liability when such a liability exists, so where there is a legal obligation upon the retirement or end of life of any asset owned by the organization. It requires the public sector organization to recognize that liability in their financial statements. So because this is now required for the current period, that did require a significant piece of work in terms of estimating what those obligations might be, particularly in the case of TCHC, where they have a number of properties that were built and constructed well before 1990. And during that period, of course, during construction, any organization was permitted to make use of asbestos. And that in particular is what has driven the large lion's share of the liability that is recognized in the current period. So we certainly worked with management throughout the period of adopting that new standard, and we're comfortable with the estimate of the obligation that's been recorded within the financial statements. There are uncorrected differences which are clearly material to your financial statements. Management has represented that they're immaterial, and we concur with that assessment. So unless there is any further questions for us, or if there's an appetite to go into more detail, we'd be happy to do so. But at this point, I will pause to see if there are questions.
Are there any questions for Kevin or Becky? Nick?
As it relates to the retiring asset obligation, obviously that's a huge number. It makes sense in the context of a housing organization that owns a lot of real estate assets of that vintage. Do you believe sort of all the methodology and calculations and sort of the way it's represented is accurate as we understand it today?
Yes, through the chair, thank you very much for that question. We spent a lot of time with management, both in preparing for the adoption of the standard, during the process of the adoption of the standard, working with management specialists, who they did use specialists in order to determine the estimate, as well as looking at the various inputs. So we're comfortable with what has been recorded at the current period of time, as well as the process that was used. It is the type of estimate where management will be required to revisit the estimate on an annual basis. So should any new information come to light, which would result in a change in the estimate, that will be reflected in future periods if and when better and new information comes to light.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for KPMG? Lily, did you have any closing comments or no?
I would like to thank KPMG team, our ELT, and also the finance team for another successful year with clean audit.
Congratulations. And I also, Kevin and Becky, I would like to thank you for your attendance. I'm sorry it wasn't in person this year. I know it's a busy time of year and it's very difficult to coordinate all these annual meetings, but I do thank you very much for all you do for TCHC. So can I have a motion to approve? Nick, thank you. Seconder? Naram, thank you. All in favor? You got your approval for your financial statements, Kevin. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks everyone.
I will move on to item 7D, which is the vendor award program roster for the water efficiency retrofits program. I pulled this one, so unless does anyone else have any questions? Okay, so I'm just going to jump into my questions. There's a reference to the original budget and that it was exhausted. I'm presuming that means it was exhausted prior to the term of the contract. And it says that you did 6,000 units. I didn't know what the value of the original contract was. I didn't have any sense of, when you do 6,000 units, how much that is per unit. So I was just interested in.
I'd have to go back and check, but I believe the original one was also for 8 million.
And so 40 million, and so you exhausted those funds doing 6,000 units?
Not 40 million total, sorry, I was doing per year. So
this is a 40 million per year contract?
No, sorry, it is 8 million per year.
Yeah.
I'd have to find that out, exactly what the total was over the spend, but I can find that out from the team and provide it to you.
Okay, because it says in that period you did 6,000 units. So with the new contract, it says there's 18,000 units left to do. So I didn't have any numbers, so I had no sense, but this is a $40 million request, and there is the intention that you're trying to do 18,000, like complete all of the units?
That is the intention. It will depend, obviously, what's required per unit, because it does vary per unit depending on what needs to be done in the unit.
Okay.
Not everything is exactly the same per unit. For example, there could have been maintenance that was done in a unit which replaced the toilet, for example. So going into that unit, they wouldn't replace the toilet if it was already with the standard that we were looking to replace, as an example. Or if the, there weren't any leaks or things like that. So the actual, they do a survey of the unit to determine what's required and then action what's required. It's not a set piece of work, scope of work for each unit.
And you think it's reasonable if it was 40 million, the original contract, and you only completed 6,000 units, that 40 million is going to be sufficient to complete 18,000? It's 3 times the number of units.
No, I would have to check on what the original amount was. I know this amount based on what the team has projected. They do believe that this should be sufficient. As I say, it will depend on what they find. We also do have to temper this too with what is available in the budget as well.
Okay, and this is part of your $350 million budget?
Correct, it does come from the capital.
And my question is, if it's a 5-year commitment, a significant portion of your 350 is going to be done in 2027, which is less than 5 years. Correct. So how do you account for the full 5-year commitment if you don't have 5 years?
Certainly, this is an upset limit. So it is dependent upon, 1, budget approval, and 2, it would depend on the amount of work that we're doing. So we're under no commitment to give $40 million worth of work over the 5 years. So it is budget dependent.
Okay. I think we've had this discussion. I think we have to watch the commitments you make, starting because the funding is running out. So we have to slow that down. This is, if it's 40 million and it's for 5 years, it's not significant, but.
And through the chairs, we do track any required commitments that we have. So for example, with capital projects where we have made the commitment, we do track those. This would be tracked as well, but as with any of our rosters, this is an upset limit. So there's no commitment or no requirement that we have to spend the 40 million or that we are committed to spend the 40 million. We can, it will depend on budget and also depend on what's required in terms of the units. But certainly if we don't have additional funding after 2027, then we would not be able to issue work against this.
Okay, and it's difficult, anyway. I'm hoping that the 40 million is sufficient to do the work that needs to be done. So can I don't have any other questions as it relates to this, so can I have a motion to approve? John, thank you. Nick, seconder, all in favor? And Alan, I just would appreciate if you could just answer the question, like send me so I understand how
Absolutely.
The budget was set and whether it's reasonable based on the costs that were previously incurred. So thank you very much. So can I move on to item number 7F? And I can't remember, was it John? No, Nick, I'm sorry, Nick that pulled this one.
So first off, appreciate the enhanced directional we're going on this reporting where we're reallocating funds. My first question is really just a confirmatory one. As I understand it, we're sort of reallocating within the demand capital budget at this point, as opposed to moving anything from planned capital to demand capital. Do I understand that correctly?
Through the chair, I think if I understood your question correctly, we are not touching the plan.
Yeah.
The plan is staying as is. Our forecast, based on what we're seeing so far, is that the plan, the COXX line item that we have in there with 100 million, projections are that it will be sufficient for the year and that we will not require to move anything from planned into that demand line.
Yeah. That's how it reads? That's just.
It's reversed. Your headings are reversed. What you're saying you're allocating from is actually what you're allocating to.
In the report.
In the
Yeah,
report.
That was going to be, because it was.
Reversed.
Because it says it's allocating to the
Yes,
unallocated,
Yes.
as opposed to the other way around.
yeah. It's backwards, so I don't know if we need to amend that when we approve it, but
And then the other thing we just want to be cautious about is what we're allocating away from. And the emergency generators, as an example, I assume that's, or I don't assume, what I'm only just concerned, like, are those emergency generators that need to be replaced and are now not? Or are those sort of upgrades that we can defer to next year because of just the life cycle, it made sense to do them this year? I just want to make sure we're not, we're allocating away from anything that we deem sort of important in emergency or critical from a life safety perspective.
Through the chair, your assumption is correct. We're not looking at removing something that is critical to be replaced. There are ones that are by life cycle. And when the budget was first established, you know, sort of Q3, Q4 last year, it was based on the best information that we had at that time. But as we get further through, then they review, you know, the projects, review it with the fire life safety team to make sure that we have enough. That being said, if something does come up and we do have to replace one, you know, for an unforeseen reason, then we would absolutely look to reallocate money back to that and then, you know, address that deficiency, because we certainly, you know, wouldn't want to leave a building without a working emergency generator. We do also have ones that are mobile, that we have a couple of those that we have, so we can move them around the portfolio as we need to in the event of an emergency or in the event that one of our permanent generators for some reason, you know, is not functional.
Thank you. I appreciate sort of this breakdown because it helped identify sort of where the money's coming from. And I guess one note, which you did know in your report, you know, we're basically using up the whole unallocated 20-odd million now. So the next time, the next report or period of time that if there required a reallocation, then it's going to have to be either specific items or out of planned capital, which we'll obviously address at that time. But effectively, that was the contingency for the portfolio of work that is being used for the first couple months of the year.
Through the chair. So that unallocated amount that you're seeing, the 20 million, was again when the budget was first done, and we are going to work with finance in order to provide a better budget closer to the time so that we don't have so much, and that really was unallocated. There is also, though, depending on the budget envelope, there is contingency within the budget envelope. So for example, we could have, and I'm just picking one, but you know, in, you know, like in grounds as an example, we may not have allocated that full budget to projects. So there is a contingency within each of the planned budget envelopes as well. And therefore that can also be used, for example, if we had to reallocate to emergency generators, then we would look to see where we haven't allocated everything within that budget envelope, and then we could reallocate to a budget envelope that requires it.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other questions on this item? I had a couple for you, Alan. So like Nick, I do caution you are moving everything out of unallocated in the first quarter, which means if anything comes up in subsequent quarters, you don't have unallocated reserves anymore. So I would caution, and I appreciate that you're going to work with Lily in the future to look at that. I did have a question about, you have a working group. Sorry? You have a working group that's looking at demand spending. And, you know, I appreciate those efforts, and it seems like so far in 2 months that at least it's positive, and I hope that continues. But you noted a number of items that the working group had completed, and one of them was your data analysis and review. I would be interested to understand what data you analyzed and what you found from that analysis.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the data that was analyzed, it was done in conjunction, as you note, there was a working committee. It had members from operations, from facilities management, from finance, audit, a number of different groups. So there was a lot of analysis that was done around the work orders to understand the nature of the work orders, where the work orders, from 2023, because that's where we saw the issues with work orders really come to a head was during 2023, and that's both on the operating.
It's been trending that way for a while.
It has been trending.
Yeah.
2023 is really when it really went way off in term. Even if we were looking at trending, it trended up and then just went way up in 2023. Agree that it's something that the trend was not good. And the actual results in 2023 were even worse than what the trending was.
Yeah.
So in conjunction, facilities management, conjunction with staff from operations, took a look at the work orders to really understand what the work orders were comprised of, what happened with them, where were they coming from, the types of work that they were, the dollar values that were associated with them, to give us a good understanding of why the work orders increased so much. There were a number of different factors that played part in that. There's the number of work orders increased, as well as the average value of work order increased, which I think makes sense in terms of the average value based on what we've seen in the industry, but then looking at the number of work orders and how they increased. And there was a lot of work done by the operations staff to look at them, to understand where they came from. There were implications of the contract managed buildings when they looked at the percentage of work orders based on, the percentage of contract managed buildings that were taken back. We did also take a look at the work orders in terms of the dollar value to understand what the implications would be in terms of going forward with looking at the change, or potential change, I should say, in the threshold between operating and capital. If we were to look, we've been working with finance and have opened the door, I guess, to discussions with the city on looking at the value of what we class as capital in order to help the overall capital plan and not have so much smaller items in the capital spend. However, that does have implications, as we all know, on our operating side. So that type of analysis was done. Other analysis that was done as well was, I know that operations has done a lot of work to look at the move-out program to understand, and that's not specifically related to demand, but it is a line item within the capital budget. And so I know they've done a lot of work to take a look at the move-out program to see what can be done to see if there's further controls that can be put in place to address the spend in that.
So what did you learn? Like, what needs to be changed?
So what we've learned from it, one was in terms of the actual scoping of the work, to make sure that it is truly what's required. And I think there was some realization that there may have been over-scoping of work. There may have been, it also appears that the actual number of work orders, since it's significantly increased, to look at the number of work orders that have been opened, reviewing the approval levels, and I know that's something that operations is looking at in terms of the approval of the work orders, which will filter through on the operating and also on the capital side. Again, with move-outs, it was looking at the scoping of the work, as well as we've made a change to some of the choices in terms of some of the items that we've seen larger price increases for than other price increases. So those have, there's been some change in terms of what can be spec'd for a move-out as well, which will help reduce the per unit cost on move-outs. I'm trying to think. I think that probably, if I'm, look, I don't know, Nadia, if you think I've forgotten anything, or if I've missed anything.
I would say the only other piece I'd want to highlight, so through the chair, is we are working with communications to send communications out to tenants to ensure that they're partners in this process, and understanding that there may be a delay in non-emergency work orders. And so we're working with our call center as well as with our local staff to ensure that tenants are aware that we're working through a bit of a process. We also worked with our frontline staff to look at repair versus replace and what does that look like. And we're also working to train up our frontline staff to ensure that we could do as much work in-house as possible. So that's underway as well.
Okay. And I know, I don't know if it was, I think it was at this board. I don't think it was at a committee, but I do remember you and Nadia speaking to the cost. I think it was John that asked the question, the cost of move-outs, and how you spoke to us about it was important to spend the money on the quality of the materials and stuff because it meant it was reduced maintenance costs. So it seems now like you're switching gears, that you're trying to reduce the costs and change the choices. So anyway, just, you know, if I would appreciate it, we're looking to get a SOGR report. And so I'm hoping that there's detail in all of this. You know, as you look at your vendor spending, the quality of the work that's done is really important. I understand that there are tenant complaints about the quality of the work, your oversight of the work. Like there's a lot to unpack there, and I'm hoping that the SOGR report, you know, includes this, and I'm looking to Sean to help us. And I know Nick and I spent a lot of time on the first version, so we're interested in this, Alan, so I'm hoping that comes forward in the report. The last thing I appreciated in the new report that came to us last night had a column for year-to-date budget. And I would like you to speak to how you actually created that year-to-date budget column, because it looks to me like you just divided everything by 12 and multiplied by 2. And I can appreciate that maybe that's more realistic in your demand spending. I would like to think in your demand spending, you're looking at other trends from prior years, because it might not be straight line, but that seems a little bit more reasonable to me. But in all my years, Alan, and it's a lot more than I would like to admit, of being responsible for project budgets, they don't work on a straight line basis. And I would like to think that a number of your projects don't even go 12 months. So I'd like to speak to the assumptions that are made here, and
Certainly, Madam Chair. So it was calculated as you indicated. It does, the straight line method does work for, generally speaking, for the demand capital category, the COXX. It tends to be roughly a straight line.
and I would like you to look at, really analyze that.
Yes.
Okay.
For the other projects that underlie all of the other budget envelopes, the straight line method is not what we would do. It was, unfortunately, I didn't know that this column was, it came about on the weekend, so it was what we could put together in short notice. In terms of we do have year-end forecasts for every project as it stands today, for every project that make up the projects within each of the planned budget envelopes. So, and that's what we look at as our year-end forecast, and then that's what helps inform in terms of what we're trying to do when we're looking at the budget reallocations. So we do take a look at the year-end forecast. You are correct that there's projects that start and finish in the year. There's some that don't take a year, and there's some that can span multi-years. We do have, if it's a multi-year project, then there is the year-end forecast based on this year-end, and then we know what is carrying over into future years so that we can track that. To your point earlier, tracking that, given that we know our budget, our more healthy capital budgets are coming to an end in a few years. And so we do monitor any commitments that we've made any hard commitments that we've made to make sure that we're not going out past where we have approval. And that's something actually as part of the 2024 budget process, we did provide to finance a list by budget envelope of any future year commitments that we have made with capital projects so that it was well understood at the time of the budget.
Okay, so my understanding is these envelopes that you present to the board for approval and you present to the city are based on projects. So if you have individual project budgets, you should be able to roll those up into an envelope budget.
That's correct, and that's what these budget envelopes are. So they represent the projects.
No, your
that are-
year-to-date.
Pardon? Sorry, pardon?
Your year-to-date budgets, the 2 months, if you've got individual project budgets, you're not doing those by month? Or you are doing them by month?
Through the chair, the individual projects, they're not done on a monthly basis. It's done on where we are going to finish the year. I don't believe in the model that we, or in the module that we use to track our projects, I don't believe that there's the monthly spend in that. I'm not saying that our project managers don't know that but it's not within that job cost module that we use.
Okay, Sean?
Yeah, so through the chair, I think the request that we have appropriate budget reporting that shows our year-to-date variance versus on our planned capital and demand capital, I think is very well understood. This is a relatively new approach to how we report this. I don't think this level of detail or even this amount of variance has been reported in this way in the past. So we have to refine this, right? And I think that as has been explained, I think we're comfortable with the straight line approach from a demand capital perspective, but we have to get to exactly what you just asked for. And I think what Alan was suggesting is there's work to be done to take the project plans that exist and roll them up into a level where we can, in fact, regularly report what our variance is versus each of those envelopes as you roll up all the projects together onto the envelope. So clearly the data is there. We have the content. It's a matter now of figuring out how we're going to roll that up and provide appropriate reporting. But absolutely happy to commit that we'll get that done.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that the information is available, because that's a significant financial control. You know, you're doing project work, you need to have it by at least monthly. So I think this speaks to the adequacy of the financial controls, and Sean, I'm gonna leave this one with you. And I hope that you'll be able to report back to us on this, because I do agree there's work to be done. So I think.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just to the point that was raised by Director McCray, I've got an amended version of the motion to reflect the recommendation in the report.
That's got the to and the from?
So I think I am sharing.
Yeah.
Grid screen, so we've changed from to here and to from here.
Yeah, it was just backwards.
Yeah.
So I think, Alan, there is some work to be done here, but can I have a motion to approve the facilities management budget envelope reallocation? Nick, thank you. John, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And I will move to item 9A, which is John's report. I don't know if Melanie is, yeah, there she is. So is there anything that you want to raise, or do you just want John to ask his questions?
Thanks through the chair. I already did a presentation or an overview at TSC, so if John just wants to ask, I'm fine with that, unless he wants me to.
If you wouldn't mind, because we have other members of the board here, just to give it was very high level, just to point out some of the new process improvements that you've made. And I think it would be good just to speak to the members of the board that weren't here at TSC.
Okay, and
So through the chair, you'll notice in this report that we've provided an update on all of the findings and recommendations made in the last OACH biannual report. I'm pleased to report that progress is being made on all systemic recommendations made by OACH, many of which will be implemented by TCHC in Q2 of this year. In 2023, we worked closely with TCHC to find ways to reduce the overall arrears balance across the organization while ensuring housing stability for tenants in arrears. Our initiatives included the ongoing training, mentoring, and support for frontline staff, the pilot project, which examines large arrears balances accumulated due to COVID, and the soon-to-be implemented new arrears collection process. 2023 ended on a positive note, and we are proud to report that referrals made to the OACH decreased by 1/3 because of our work with TCHC to build frontline staff capacity to resolve more cases in the region. In 2024, we see this only continuing to improve as the Stage 1 checklist is set to go live within the system this month. This will assist both OACH and TCHC to be more efficient in the screening of referrals and sent back cases. In 2023, we also committed to provide a review of breached repayment agreements for the purpose of understanding how they can be more effective as an arrears collection tool. From this review, it was determined that there are opportunities to improve the success of these agreements by focusing on catching breaches early, creating flexibility within automatic payments, and updating the home system. To conclude, in 2024, we will work with TCHC to implement the systemic recommendations made in 2023 with a focus on exploring opportunities for greater efficiency, improved tenant service, and strong and productive relations. So thank you.
So, Madam Chair, I just have a follow-up question.
yes?
So thank you for the very clearly written report, Melanie. In the report on page 10, 4.1, arrears managed by the OACH, it says that total arrears directly paid to TCHC totaled just over $630,000. And then there's a line that says resolving losses of subsidy, $367,000. So are those people that got their subsidy and then the cash came to TCHC? Or is that a non-cash item?
Thank you. So through the chair, so what that means is when it came to OACH, the person's RGI subsidy had been removed, so they were being charged the market rent. So through our work, so basically they were being overcharged rent. So through our work, we were able to work with the tenant to support them to reverse that back to the correct RGI rent. So it's a direct reduction in the arrears owed.
Okay, so that's a non-cash item then?
It's a non-cash item, yes.
And the next item, completing annual or in-year reviews, that's another $80,000.
Yes, through the chair. So that's similar thing. So
thing.
that would be tenants who come to us and they say, my income has changed, it's decreased, so I need support in submitting my documents to get the rent recalculated to the correct amount, so they're not being overcharged rent.
Got it, okay. So the total, cash amount was what, 270,000 or something like that? Is that around what was pulled
For the
in?
loss of subsidy in your reviews?
No, the total cash.
Oh, cash, sorry, yes.
So it says 630 minus, all right, so and that's, I see, so 182,000 was the amount, okay.
Maybe I can clarify it. So the 0.1 is actual direct cash, like that's just because it's dealing with straight arrears. So these are tenants who haven't paid rent. So we're supporting them to get these benefits to reduce their actual arrears balance. Whereas the last two, it does decrease the overall arrears balance for the corporation, but it's just by actually getting the rent charged correctly.
All right. Okay, thank you. That's all, Madam Chair.
Questions for Melanie as it relates to the OACH report? Okay, hearing none. Excuse me, can I have a motion to receive? John, thank you. Naram, thank you. All in favor? Perfect. Thank you very much, Melanie. And we do appreciate the change in the style of the reporting. Thank you. I will move to item number 9B. And I understand that we have a deputant Mr. Avila asked to depute this morning, although our deadline for request for deputations was Friday at 3 o'clock. I'm comfortable with Mr. Avila. He is here, and I'm comfortable with him deputing unless anyone has any other concerns. So, Mr. Avila, the microphone is yours. And it's tenant engagement system review. And so I would ask that you speak to that item. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this important item, tenant engagement review. I have commented in regards capacity building for the tenant engagement. I have also made several recommendations. One that I want to ensure that this board understands clearly, and I spoke to Sean about it, is fire prevention mechanisms that we need to put in place when it comes to e-bike and bikes in our buildings. You know, a lot of people complain. They said, we don't have, why the elevators are being used by e-bikes? Why we're allowing bikes on the elevators? And the answer is simple. We don't have an e-bike bike policy citywide. And that will save us a lot of aggravation. So the Tenant Advisory Committee is a good way, it's a good channel, but perhaps we need to have more voices, more representation at this committee, and also allow more participation from tenants who are not members of the Tenant Advisory Committee, that they can bring important matters, as I just explained to you. A good way to deal with fire prevention is to have a good policy to address batteries catching on fire in our units. Thanks God, no one has perished yet, but you know, if we are progressive, instead of waiting for the city, this is a great opportunity for the TCHC board to do something about it. Now, when it comes to communications, it's very important. Thank you, Derek, for your apologies on regards to the last Tenant Services Committee, the conflict with the YouTube channel and the WebEx video. It appears that that problem hasn't been yet resolved, but perhaps you could have a third option available, which is our good friends of Regent Park. Regent Park TV has come to City Hall before, and we were able to have cameras here and carry live to our community in Regent Park. Perhaps as part of the tenant engagement process, we can have the Regent Park TV and come here, you know, and share this good news that happens in this board, because that is what we're lacking. Perhaps is going outside and sharing the things that are happening in our communities, in our buildings. And I want to end it up by saying, Sean, I want to invite you to this week, on Thursday, we're having the SDP table, shareholders table, where we're going to be talking about our future plans for Regent Park. The four tables, which are community building, safety, communications, and employment, which are the four basic things that we need for our community to overcome poverty. You know, TCHC give us brand new homes, which are very thankful, but we're still living in poverty. So we need to do more to improve the lives of tenants, and more participation at the Tenant Advisory Committee will be a great way to do it. Thank you. Those are my thoughts for today. I'm here 24 hours. You got any questions, you know where to find me.
And Mr. Avila, I would recommend that you look at our annual report.
I will
Because
certainly
that highlights a lot of the activities that are going on in the different communities. And anyway, I would recommend that you take the time to read it.
As you know, I live a busy life, but I will do my best.
Okay, maybe nighttime reading.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments as it relates to this? No? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for your time, sir. And I think, Nick, you actually pulled this item.
Yeah, I think just a brief remark, tenant engagement, obviously critically important, something we can absolutely do to continue to improve. My only comment is sort of the survey results I found were sort of framed maybe negatively, where it was negatives and unsure or neutrals bundled, as opposed to positive and unsure or neutral. All the surveys I've been involved with, like the unsure / neutrals, I'd be biased towards those. That's good news in that not everyone's going to pound the pavement how great communication is, but it's people that are upset with it are going to say negative. So I was focused, I sort of did my own extremely basic math of like what was the negative, and then the size of that, sort of the order of magnitude, as opposed to the bundling of the neutral as inherently negative, just given the vast number of people we're surveying and so on. So that was my only comment, is maybe a little bit better than we think we are at it. Still room for improvement, but I wouldn't bundle neutral with negative per se.
Sean, and then Nadia. Thank you.
So through the chair, appreciate the comment. There's certainly different frameworks that you can use in terms of how you model that and measure it. I think we had a pretty robust conversation on this at the Tenant Services Committee, and also just what was focused on there was a significant improvement over time, right? So even just looking at the positive responses, we've seen, I don't know the exact numbers in front of me, but we saw a significant improvement since the last time that we conducted that survey. So that was very encouraging to the team, and I'm glad that that got some celebration around the table.
Nadia?
Thank you for the comment, Director McCray, and through the chair. You're absolutely right. What we heard in the presentation through Ada's team around the tenant satisfaction survey, that neutrality actually typically represents tenants who may or may not be directly involved in the system, so it isn't necessarily negative at all. And oftentimes we find tenants don't want to be. They just want to live happily in their communities, and so you're right. And I think for future reports, we'll definitely separate the two.
I think that's an important change. Are there any other questions on the tenant engagement system review? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion for approval? Nick, thank you. John, thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. And we'll, we'll move into item 9C, which is the community safety. And I think, Nick, you pulled that one as well.
Yeah, and again, not actually on the content. It just struck me, community safety is one of the most important things that we need to be focused on. And I don't recall the last time we've had a board level discussion on how things are going in terms of our safety in our communities and so on. This is a nice summary of sort of the last year, but more just from a operational perspective. And I may have missed that board meeting that happened, but I would just want to note it's an important topic we should be discussing on a fairly regular basis in terms of just safety in the community and how performance is being and so on. And just the stats sort of triggered that for me.
Okay, and through CSAC, I think it's that committee there. I know the city is actually doing a review, and they've retained a consultant to review this. Others are much better informed on this. My understanding is they don't have a deadline or a due date when they're...
So I was actually interviewed for it.
Yeah, so was I.
I think June.
Okay, so when I was interviewed, he
Yeah.
wouldn't make any commitment.
Yeah, I can't remember if that was the draft or the final or what have you, but
Okay.
it did sort of strike me that I'm not sure if it needs to be on every meeting, but certainly on a somewhat regular basis, we should be discussing sort of what's happening from a safety perspective in the communities and so on.
And I don't know if Nadia wants to speak. I don't know if Paula wants to speak because she chairs the CSAC
I
committee.
just want to say thank you, but I think we need to understand what matrix we are going to be looking at, Nick. And we do have, I would draw your attention to the categories of communities, which really does look at safety and work from there. So just having a CSU report to me is not a safety overview. So if Nadia and Ms. Gavea would like to look at what a report would comprise, I think that's helpful. It should probably go to, anyway, I'll just leave it at that because very specific, there are good questions.
No, and I guess my point is like...
Matrix that we may not have, so what are they that you're looking for?
Yeah, and I guess it was a more general comment. I think this is a report to the Toronto Police Services Board that we're approving. It's not necessarily sort of a board report discussion. It's more just, you know, we're blessing a report that's going to be forwarded on.
We're just receiving it.
Yeah, as opposed to, you know, how is safety going in the communities and how is CSU, et cetera, performing? Just a general check-in, I don't recall the last time we've done that. So I'm just noting that, yeah.
Yes. Nadia?
So through the chair, I'm happy to comment on that. We are bringing forward an operationally focused statistic annual report to Tenant Services Committee in June. Maybe we can recommend that come to the board as well, because that will be the type of report. We'll also be presenting the data at that meeting. And so I think it'll be an opportunity for us to potentially bring it to the board if that's the interest of the board to have such a discussion. So if that makes sense, we can do that as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to defer to the chair of the board, chair of that committee to make that recommendation. It's some sort of topic, I think, at the board level from a safety and security perspective is warranted.
And can I just ask, is there a firm date when this city review will be completed? And my understanding was that they would be reporting to the board as well.
So through the chair, my understanding is they plan to finalize the CSU review results in October and present it back through CSAC and to Tenant Services Committee at that point in the fall of this year.
Okay, so it's the fall. And so I think it would be important for that to also come to the board. John?
Yeah, so is that's a city council initiative, isn't it, the review, the CSU review?
So through the chair, it was my understanding it was originally initiated through the tenant's first report, but Councillor Fletcher, I don't know if that's accurate. I don't believe it was city council directed.
No, not true. It's not true. It's from CSAC and it's from our own board.
So it's our,
But it was sent,
all right, so it's our own.
our own board directed that, John.
And do those, will those, so right now, we're in a situation until the CSU review is done, before we can, you know, resume staffing CSU up to full measure. And is that a decision that is going to be taken by city council, or is that a decision that's going to be taken by the board? I guess, and Paul, with all due respect, I guess that's a question for Dara, right? Because that's a governance issue, but this was a TCHC initiative, but I'm just wondering if it's also going on to city council.
So I think it would be dependent upon the recommendations in the report as to whether or not those recommendations would fall within the mandate of the board or would require that the board refer matters to council or the Police Services Board for its consideration.
So as it is now, it's a board-initiated report. It's reporting to the board, and then the board decides on next steps.
My understanding was that, I think it's Connect TO, I can't remember, his name was Neil. Excuse me. My understanding was that he was actually coming to the board to present his findings. Why
don't you ask me about this? Because I know it quite well. I'm chairing that committee.
Okay, so is that the case? Is his intention to come to the board?
This is a board requested report.
Yep.
That was decided that the city was requested to do it for the same reason that TCHC staff weren't asked to do it. So the city was asked to do it. I don't know if Director Douglas is still on here.
No,
but
she had to leave, sorry.
Okay. So she's kind of tasked with that through CSAC. She's working. SDFA undertook that, looked for a consultant. It took a while. The consultant's working on this. The status of everything is we don't know what the CSU complement will be doing or look like or anything in that way, whether it will underscore, yes, this is the right model, or do we go back to something that was a previous model? So that's the overview of this report. I think it would be great to have a safety report, but I would want that done by the COO, and I'd want the matrix in there, Nick, that I'd like you to be clear on what you're looking for so that we have that high level report and we're not, it kind of reflects more of the work that has been undertaken by the committee. And the categories of communities. If everybody's not really familiar with those, then I think that your suggestion of having that at the board is very important one. And I don't know if you are familiar with those or not.
Okay. I agree with Nick's suggestion that this should be something that comes to the board. And so, Paula, I am going to leave this in your hands as the chair.
Well, the report will always come to the board because it's a board report. It's whether we have something between now and when the CSU report comes. That's all. That's the only question.
Okay. So
That is our report, board. We're paying for it.
Okay. Yep.
I'm happy to talk to you about it, Adele, outside and see what it looks
Sure,
like.
So just through the chair, I'd suggest community safety as a topic is critically important and something that we should be discussing regularly. Obviously, that happens through CSAC and tenant services, but we can escalate some of those conversations here as well from an operational perspective to ensure that you have clarity on how that's happening throughout the community. I would suggest the CSU review is probably more of a one-time sort of an undertaking that can be done alongside that. So I don't think one necessarily stops us from doing the other. There could be a question of timing. Do you want to see the CSU review before you get into regular safety updates from our communities? But I'm sure we can take that away and figure out the right timing.
Okay. So I will leave it with you and Paula and Nadia, and we'll move this forward. Are there any other questions or comments on the CSU report? Okay, Marcel?
Yeah, just a comment. If there is going to be like a safety report, I would really encourage whoever's going to be doing the reporting to actually speak to maybe some of the tenant reps and maybe bring it to the tenant advisory council and get their input on safety. And then just compare notes. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, so I know that the board was interviewed. I don't know who else is being interviewed for this review. Is it going to?
Those are two different things. I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt you.
Talking about something
It's just
different?
saying Correct. I think they're different.
Oh, okay. I thought he was talking about the consultant that had been engaged by the city and their engagement with.
Marcel was talking about the consultant. I think they've already done that with the key tenant leaders.
Okay.
So through the chair, we're in the process of establishing meetings with tenant leaders for the interview process with the consultants. So that's well underway right now. I don't believe we've finalized that process, or the consultant hasn't finalized that process, but we have had discussions on it. In terms of the community safety report that we are bringing to tenant services community in June, maybe I can chat with Director Charlebois offline in terms of how we engage tenants in that process, because it's a statistical report with some analysis presented by the community safety unit. So how we engage tenants in that process is something that we could take back to see if we could loop in either through TAC or another committee to do so.
Okay, so Marcel, Nadia is going to reach out to you offline. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes, I am very much comfortable with that. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay.
And Adele, can I mention that if we're dealing with the pillars differently, that everything will start to shift around?
I'm sorry,
we just
Paula, you used a word that's no longer appropriate.
Oh, the former pillars then, because we're not just having reporting out as if it was the regular, it's a whole different mindset, sea change. Thank you.
I'm just following your rules, Paula. John.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, I have a question for Mr. Britton. This report goes to the Toronto Police Services Board, and then, do you make a presentation to the Police Services Board, or is this just tabled? Do you get any feedback? Is there back and forth once this is submitted?
Through the chair, Director Campbell, this is a document that's required as per the MOU that was signed in 2002, and in 2019, it was determined that it had never come through our board. It was always submitted directly to Toronto Police Services Board. So that's why we built the process that it goes through TSC and ultimately through the board. But the report itself will be coupled with reports from UFT and from TTC, and they go through the Special Constable Liaison Office submitted to the Toronto Police Services Board. We will be present that day for any questions that they have. All the special constable agencies will have representation. Based on the questions, it will be received or not, and then ultimately filed on their end.
And does anybody on the police department, do they review these reports and then provide, you know, commentary or anything, or is it just really for information purposes?
Yes, through the Chair, Director Campbell, we go through the Special Constable Liaison that reports up to Staff Sergeant Steve Kerr and up to one of the deputies, Deputy Chief Rob Johnson, and they will review it and send it back for further information. But the MOU itself dictates, this report is submitted as per the dictation of Toronto Police Services, Toronto Police Service. They tell us what they want to include in it. All the Special Constable agencies include that standard. And again, it's a very statistical report submitted to them for their purposes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments on the CSU report? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion to receive? John, thank you. Parthy, thank you. All in favor? Okay, can I ask if there are is there any other business for the public session? Okay, hearing none, I would like to thank everyone for their time. It's been a long, long day, and could I have a motion to adjourn public session? John, and Nick's got both his hands up and his feet, so we're gonna, he's voted for all of us. All in favor. Thank you very much for your time today.